Hey gang, welcome to part two of our series on the UFL, United Football League. This In this episode, I'm going to be addressing my plan to fix the UFL before it implodes. So, what would I recommend? Normally, I charge Mike Repole a consulting fee for this, but I'd give him this plan to survive his own missteps for free. He can pay me for next year's plan. Let's be clear, this is not what I would do in a perfect world, but it's a workable path based on where we're starting and on Repole's stated goals. His desire to keep an 8-team league structure for this coming season and create better game optics by using smaller stadiums. I built the plan around that. But I did not build it around saving money at all costs, because every spring league, with the exception of the original USFL, failed because they were overly focused on saving over of a league. They're just some expenses that are worth paying for. So let's start up our list of things to do. 1, you've got to stop the PR bleeding. You've got to rebuild trust with your USFL fans. Repole doesn't seem to understand, and clearly needs to understand, how badly he's mismanaged this asset that is half USFL. He needs to fix the devastating PR injury he has inflicted upon the league. USFL fans are probably the majority of the league's potential viewership. I've tried to crack the numbers a little bit, and it looks like they represent 40 to 45% of the league's total TV viewership. They include loyalists from old USFL cities, including some whose teams haven't even come back yet. So first, you need to announce that only 2 teams are being contracted, not 4. Make it clear that these 2 teams could return in the future, and that immediately diffuses a ticking time bomb with the fan bases. It makes it seem like it's not personal against the USFL fans. So what 2 teams do you contract? Number 1, Memphis. No one's going to argue with this. It's been a problem from the beginning. Just be clear that the league will revisit Memphis once the new stadium upgrades are complete. Doesn't mean you're going back. It just means that you'll look again. Number 2, suspend Houston for 1 year. Now, I want to be clear. I do not think Houston is a failed market. It was simply incompetently managed by the local staff and the upper league leadership. More money needed to be invested in promotion, and that isn't the fault of Houston USFL fans. I think you need to say it like that. You need to take blame for that. Blame the league and take responsibility for the league's failures. Announce that the Roughnecks are being rebuilt from the ground up with the goal of returning in 2027. Say you're committing at least $1 million to marketing the new Roughnecks for their return to push ticket sales. Announce that A.J. Smith, the former offensive coordinator, will be the head coach. Bring back quarterback Brandon Silvers as the first player assigned in 2027. Signal that this will be the Houston Roughneck team's fans wanted and what fans deserve. Announce you are in negotiations to play the games from 2027 to 2029 at the smaller 22,000-seat Shell Energy Stadium. Now, why do that? You've got to reestablish the brand, I think, before returning to play at the University of Houston's Tedesco Stadium. I know you have a great deal with UH for about $200,000 a year to rent that stadium. It's probably the cheapest deal in the league, but you have a damaged brand. It's worth spending an extra $100,000 to $150,000 per year for 3 years to operate in a modern stadium with half the total capacity of Tedesco as you rebuild UFL credibility in Houston. When you bring that suspicious crowd of 12,000 people back in for the first game of the restored Houston team, do you want to drop those fans into a 40,000-seat stadium? Or do you want to see them organically appear to fill a 22,000-seat stadium? Which scenario is going to feel comfortable for them? Which scenario is going to have them coming back? Okay, next, you got to keep Michigan. Make it loud and clear that you've completed your evaluation and that the Panthers aren't going anywhere. Look, I get that the Lions are screwing you on the stadium. Totally screwing you. I get that they are charging you basically the full stadium rental cost for half the stadium. I get that $2.5 million for a stadium is like 40% of last year's total stadium budget for all 8 teams. I get why that seems beyond the pale to you. But you're kind of jammed due to your public edicts. You need to keep the Panthers for public relations. The fans showed up in strong numbers when you finally played in their city, and you cannot punish the fans for showing up and not get a backlash in attendance drops at all your locations. You either make right with the Panther USFL fans or prepare for your established teams to show a 20 to 30% decline in attendance as the fans lose faith in your ability to succeed and proceed. I think you can live with the costs for a couple of years if you squint at it. You paid probably $800,000 last year to rent the Dome in St. Louis, and it gave you about $29,500 in total attendance, average attendance. If you can scrape $25,000 in attendance from Detroit, playing in a 28,000 seat lowered bowl, I think that's a reasonable. What is the reasonable high-end projection from that? What would be a reasonable stadium cost for you from that? $1 million, $1.2 million? You know, they're charging you $2.5 million. I think you can choke that extra $1 million loss down as the cost of doing business for a few years. The reality is that there isn't the kind of ceiling on Detroit fans that you have in other markets. In a few years, you may be paying the $2.5 million rate and renting the whole stadium. It could be your number one draw city because the Lions are usually mediocre at best, and Detroit has always been quick to warm to the Panthers. And just think about it. What finer revenge can you have on your landlords? Call it a painful investment in the future. You've let rumors spread, and that has fans in Detroit moving away from the UFL. You need a strong, i.e. expensive, promotional push in Detroit to undo the poisonous contraction narrative you created in your clumsiness. If you advertise aggressively that Michigan is in the UFL's long-term plans and encourage people to support the team as the league resurrects more USFL Panther rivals, I still believe you could get $25,000 per game in Detroit next year, partially offsetting the stadium costs. Pay the rent on Ford Stadium. They may be ripping you off and trying to sink the league, charging you $2.5 million per a five-game season for only the lower bowl, and you may think you should only pay like half that for the lower deck capacity, but just spend the money. Michigan is the only franchise where you could actually see fan increases swelling a team from plain old USFL team drawing 9 to 13,000 to a robust St. Louis level 25 to 35K per game. That is a market that you eat $1 million a year hit on up front and spend a lot of money on marketing to maximize. Ultimately, doesn't matter if they charge you $2.5 million to pay there if you end up drawing 35,000 per game down the road. There are markets you should smartly gamble or invest in. Detroit clearly seems to be a little different from your other UFL markets. The other ones, it probably does make sense to be more conservative. You pay the money up front to turn around the perception of the league and pay the stadium costs, and you'll likely do very well in Michigan. Birmingham stays if publicly state that Birmingham's future depends on one thing: rain covers at Protective Stadium. Get the mayor to commit. Say Birmingham is the 3-time champion, but they cannot average 15,000. You need to acknowledge you get a fair deal on the stadium rental for Birmingham, but winning is what the front office and coaching staff did to make this franchise stable. Everything else is not matched up that level. Say that the stadium is doing too much to limit the turnout. Say there are stadium issues that need to be addressed. Say the lack of weather protection has hurt attendance, and you want to give fans a better experience. Installing rain covers like many soccer-specific stadiums isn't expensive in the grand scheme, and it will help fan turnout. It will make Birmingham Stadium a better, more useful stadium. But most importantly, it makes the Stallions' survival in the city of Birmingham on the city of Birmingham and on the fans of Birmingham, not on the UFL. Sensible city management could conclude Birmingham should fix at least this one aspect of their stadium, because ultimately the weaknesses of the venue just hurt the future chances to monetize it. You don't want people bad-mouthing your relatively new stadium. The fans can view this as a wake-up call. Go see the 3 times champions or they get contracted next year. If your city refuses, fine, you've got your exit, and the USFL fan bases won't blame you. When I'm talking about rain covers, I'm talking about awnings. You can see in this image here of the BC Lions temporary stadium, Empire Field 2, that they built for $15 million in about a decade ago, that seated about 27,000. That among the things that they thought were important were awnings to protect their customers. Now, that's been something that's been a normal part of soccer-specific stadiums. You saw it at Saputo Field. They do it at Providence Park. It's allowed Portland, a very rainy place, to maintain a very high turnout of the audience. I think if I had been in the UFL's position, I would have pushed for that rather than aggressively taking on the fans and taking a risky PR move to push them directly to buy more tickets. Replace the front office staff for the retained USFL teams. You've already fired pretty much everyone. This frames it as a strategy and not a purge. Say it's about rebuilding community ties and improving local engagement with staff more attuned to that, even if some of them are quietly rehired staff. With raises that amount to concessions to those employees that you foolishly threw out the baby with the bathwater in contracting all of these teams without doing your homework. Strategic expansion, smart markets, sensible stadiums. So Repole wants 8 teams. Let's build for a smart 8 teams. Let's take a look at the soccer-specific stadiums you should be looking at. The big ones. Geodis Park, Nashville. That's a capacity of 30,000. Dignity Health Sports Park, LA, capacity 27,000. Inter & Co. Stadium, Orlando, 25.5K. Providence Park, Portland, capacity 25,000. Sports Illustrated Stadium, New Jersey, 25,000. Now, all of these sites, to me, are miles better than Louisville or Boise, but let's peel the onion more. Now, that's a good list of major soccer cities. I think you can count on the best of them charging a major premium to let a UFL team destroy their turf early in the MLS season. Most of those teams pull crowds at 85 to 95% of capacity. Those teams are going to charge a lot. They're going to charge a premium price to get you in there. But what you need is one of those stadiums where a USFL brand used to exist in those cities. That gets you down to LA, Orlando, and New Jersey. New Jersey is historically the strongest football city of these 3, and current attendance suggests that with only 80% capacity at their soccer games, they are the weakest of the soccer cities of the 3. I suspect you might actually counterintuitively get a surprisingly decent stadium offer from New Jersey. So my step 1 would be add the New Jersey Generals playing at Sports Illustrated Stadium with 25,000 seats. Now, it's in the New York City DMA. It still costs a pretty penny to get into that stadium, but New Jersey fans will average in the low 20s in that venue. You'll draw 22,000, something like that. This is a surefire expansion win if the team is reasonably competitive, and will serve as a good rival for Michigan and DC, stabilizing the league. 22,000 would represent your number 2 team in the league. Young fans don't know crap about the old USFL, and they assume that the Generals, being in the New York City DMA, were the flagship of the league, and not just a pretender with a good Herschel Walker-driven attendance. Kids, Michigan, the good half of Chicago and Arizona, and Philadelphia dominated that league. The Generals were like the modern Dallas Cowboys of that league. But whatever. Play off that ignorance and give the fans what they want. They can have the number 1 DMA in the nation, juicing your TV ratings with almost zero chance of failure. Just pay the rent. Number 2, add the Chicago Blitz, playing at SeatGeek Stadium, a capacity of 20,000. This I'm suggesting because it's a soccer-specific stadium. It's in the number 3 DMA. in Chicago, and it's an extremely cheap rental, in theory. I don't know, I haven't called them, but in theory, a cheap rental. It's a stadium that I don't think is used for soccer anymore, but it was built for soccer. Attendance would likely be Orlando-like, maybe 10,000 to 16,000, but it would be a lot to restore the idea that this league is half USFL. You'd have, the media in New York and Chicago both promoting the fact that this is half USFL. This is the kind of public relations push you need. Plus, they would be a good rival for the Eastern teams. Your 8 teams now look like this. You've got, in the USFL division, you've got New Jersey, the New Jersey Generals. You've got Chicago, the Chicago Blitz. You've got Michigan, the Michigan Panthers, and probably Birmingham, the Birmingham Stallions. In the XFL division, you've got St. Louis, San Antonio, Dallas, and DC. So why would I say don't add Columbus this year, as you've apparently already announced that you intend to do? I think it's because if you're going to cut just USFL teams, you really need to bring back just USFL teams. I think it's foolish to lead with this market as you did with your plan, because that can only lead to this market being skunked a little bit by your plan. You need to earn back the trust of your fans first, and then end Columbus. You want to do it after the fans are back on your side. You don't want fans of the other USFL teams feeling that Columbus somehow stole their team. If you implode the Panthers and replace them with Columbus, which is pretty much what you're saying you intend to do, you probably poison the Ohio well. If you let Columbus launch as a fresh expansion team to rival an established Michigan team, you're much better off. You're going to have much better fan support in Columbus. So my thought is that you save that and you make that team 9 when you go to an expansion to 10 teams in 2027. But what if you chose to be more aggressive? I'm going to give you an alternative plan for 10 teams for the 2026 season. Do I recommend this? Not really. I mean, you don't have a lot of time, but you do have access to a lot of money. So maybe you could pull this off. One way to show strength and stability would be to stick to the original expansion plan, to go for 10 teams in 2026. But you'll have to spend major promotional money to drive ticket sales. You can do it and do it right, but it's just going to be expensive. I would say keep Houston suspended, keep Houston in the ice pack until 2027. Instead, I would say you partner Columbus with Orlando. That could be a good approach to take. Don't bring back, if you're gonna add Orlando, you have them playing at Inter & Co Stadium for with a capacity of about 25,500. Don't bring back the Renegade brand though. Not just because you're only using in Dallas, because it's really a pathetically weak brand. When you stop and think about it, what is a Renegade? I mean, like if you were going to draw a Renegade, what would you draw? You might as well call them the Contrarians. A Renegade means very little. Does a Renegade have anything to do with Cowboys? I don't think so. It's just a weaker, to apply it like that just makes it a weaker version of an outlaw, which you've got potentially Oklahoma in the future. Why would you do that? An outlaw does actually intertwine with historic cowboy culture, just like a bandit would. The USFL had some great bands, but the Renegades and the Spirit of Miami were undoubtedly their worst. I would say create a fresh USFL-style, regionally sensible brand for Orlando. Then you find a pass-happy, Florida-connected coach, maybe somebody with ties to Steve Spurrier. Use Camping World only for playoff games, not for regular season games. So that leaves you with a 10-team league of St. Louis, San Antonio, Dallas, D.C., and Michigan, Birmingham, New Jersey, Chicago, and Orlando. Next on our list of things to do on this plan is to fix Texas. Your next issue coming up next year is going to be that Texas is fragile, investing to earn fans. If a team can get 25,000 fans in a top 20 DMA, you pay the stadium fee, even if it's high, especially if you're a billionaire, especially if you just invested millions of dollars to own. Houston was sabotaged by the presence of coach Curtis Johnson, whose lack of connection to the area fans and the mediocre product he oversaw alienated 2/3 of the fan base. He went 1-9 and then returned to coach a 500 team the next year. He's apparently gone now with the rest of the Roughnecks organization. A contraction of the Houston franchise makes fans in Dallas and San Antonio less eager to support the UFL. That is a problem in Texas. Dallas is trending downward, and the San Antonio franchise threatens to replicate Houston's collapse. San Antonio went 1-9 themselves this year after choosing the wrong leadership in a power struggle. Take a hard look at what happened to Houston season ticket sales after going 1-9 with a suspect returning coach. San Antonio's on the same path. San Antonio may be a higher ceiling market, but they are also a very low floor market. You need to fill the weakest spots on the San Antonio roster. You can't afford to have teams go out of business. That it makes a lot more sense to sort of push down on the scale a little bit for San Antonio's roster. You can't afford to have them go 1-9 again. I would say that the way to do this most effectively would be when you contract your teams and you end up with your pool of talent, let the San Antonio team choose like the first 3 players and then just eliminate them after that from the draft, from the expansion draft. This would allow, let's say they don't have a middle linebacker. Maybe they can get the best middle linebacker they could possibly get. Maybe if they need a cornerback, they get a cornerback. They basically allow them to fill 2 or 3 spots with the best players they can pick up out of those folded teams. What you want to have is San Antonio competitive and playing for the playoffs next year. You may, along these lines, you may consider replacing the unproven head coach, Peyton Pardee, with a more proven coach. Names that pop in my head as good potential replacement candidates are former Memphis coach Justin Fuente or former San Antonio coach Mike Riley. These are known quantities. I think both of them can win at a league of this level. They can direct a bounce-back season. I feel bad doing this because Pardee is likely going to be a good head coach one day. But can a 1-9 UFL team afford to roll the dice on a homie hookup, unproven coach who failed to earn the job as an interim coach? It would be cool to see Riley back in San Antonio, or Fuente coaching San Antonio-born Paxton Lynch for the Brahmas. That would be something neat to see, and something you could sell. San Antonio needs to rebound this year, or Texas becomes a huge problem for the league next year. The fourth thing I have as an element in this plan is to never relocate. Contract teams and then expand and add teams. When you move a team, it reads as stealing it from a fan base. You look at the damage moving the Chicago Blitz did to the original USFL. When they moved from Chicago to Arizona, it absolutely infuriated the Chicago fans. And it pissed off USFL fans in general because it felt non-competitive. You don't want to consider moving a team like the Stallions, putting them into a different market in different uniforms just because you're trying to save time. Fans don't forgive that. You've already burned a lot of goodwill with the fans. Don't pour gas on that fire by making the Stallions fans see their players playing together as someone else's team. It's an insult. You need to properly contract failed teams. Pull all of their players out into an expansion draft pool. Make all the backups on the rest of your teams available in that expansion draft pool. As I mentioned, you probably want to let San Antonio pick the first 3 players from the pool to fill their glaring weaknesses. Then you start the draft for your new teams. Once an existing team loses 3 players, their remaining backups are removed from the draft pool. Do a proper contraction and then a proper expansion. My final thoughts. This plan is designed to push average attendance to about 14 to 15,000 and keep your media partners happy with strong viewership. It's designed to give you markets where the game day optics are better, but also protect you from your myopia about soccer-specific stadiums. The 8-team plan maintains your preferred 8-team structure, which is a sensible preference given the short time frame until the start of the next season. It also saves face with USFL fans. It opens the door to smarter expansion without gutting the league's core or alienating your best markets. It's a better plan than imploding half your fan base just to get back to 8 new teams with no existing brand value. So Mike Repole, I think your league is clearly on the cusp of something. With your partners and the funding you have available, you should be on the cusp of a runaway success. But this plan of yours is horrible. It has you on the cusp of failure, like so many other spring leagues with rich owners before you. You should probably reconsider the message of war on the USFL fans you are unintentionally sending. If you've liked what I've had to say, please subscribe and you'll get the next UFL thing, which already got planned out in my head. It's coming very soon. And if you go ahead and click like, it will also push this so that other fans will see this content and help ensure its survival. I thank you very much. See you next time.